Property law governs the rights of individuals and entities to possess, use, and transfer property. This introduction focuses on the fundamental concept of ownership, which is the most comprehensive right a person can have in relation to property. Ownership represents the strongest claim over property, encompassing the ability to use, enjoy, and dispose of it freely. We differentiate ownership from lesser rights, such as mere possession or limited rights that don't grant full control. This video will explore key aspects of property law, including methods of acquiring ownership, protecting it against infringement, and various types of property rights. Ownership can be acquired through purchase, which involves a legal transaction where property is exchanged for consideration, typically money. The key requirements include agreement between parties, valid consideration, and compliance with formalities like written contracts for a movable property. Inheritance transfers ownership upon a person's death through their will or intestate succession. Legal requirements include a valid will, proper execution, and registration. For example, in a recent case, the Supreme Court clarified inheritance rights for adopted children. Donation involves the voluntary transfer of ownership without consideration. It must be in writing, accepted by the donee, and registered for a movable property. A landmark case involved a donation challenge where the court upheld the transfer based on clear intent. Original acquisition, or occupatio, occurs when ownership is gained through taking possession of ownerless property, such as wild animals or abandoned goods. No formalities are required beyond possession, but the property must truly be ownerless. Owners have legal remedies to protect their rights against infringement. This section covers common remedies such as actions for eviction, interdicts, and claims for damages. Common remedies include actions for eviction, interdicts, which are court orders to stop certain actions, and claims for damages. Actions for eviction allow owners to legally remove unauthorized occupants from their property. Interdicts are court orders that prevent or stop infringement of ownership rights. Claims for damages provide monetary compensation for losses caused by infringement of ownership. These remedies are available when ownership rights are infringed based on legal principles of equity and justice, and through proper court procedures. Recent legislation aims to assist owners in certain circumstances, providing faster processes and enhanced remedies for protecting property rights. Ownership rights in property law are not always permanent. Various circumstances and legal processes can terminate these rights. Ownership is not always perpetual. It can be terminated through several legal methods. One way to terminate ownership is through the sale of property. This involves a voluntary agreement where the owner transfers title to a buyer in exchange for payment. Donation involves giving property away without receiving payment. This requires formal documentation and may have tax implications. If property is completely destroyed, ownership rights terminate. This could be due to natural disasters, accidents, or deliberate acts. Expropriation occurs when the state takes private property for public purposes. Legal safeguards ensure fair compensation and proper procedures. These methods of terminating ownership each involve specific legal procedures and important safeguards to protect property rights. A crucial distinction exists between real rights and personal rights. Real rights are rights in a thing, while personal rights are rights against a person. This section explores the differences in their nature, scope, and enforceability, highlighting how the type of right determines the available legal remedies. Real rights are rights in a thing, meaning they are enforceable against the entire world. This includes rights like ownership, where you have absolute control over a property such as land. Personal rights are rights against a specific person, meaning they can only be enforced against the debtor who owes the obligation. This includes contractual claims, where someone has promised to perform a duty. The first key difference is in their nature. Real rights are rights in things. They attach directly to property. Personal rights are rights against persons. They create obligations between individuals. In terms of scope, real rights are enforceable against the entire world. Anyone who interferes with your property can be held liable. Personal rights can only be enforced against the specific person who owes the obligation. Regarding enforceability, real rights allow for direct enforcement through remedies like re vindicatio, where you can claim your property from anyone possessing it. Personal rights require action against the debtor and are limited to their available assets. Ultimately, the type of right determines the available legal remedies. Real rights provide stronger protection with broader enforcement options against the world. Personal rights are more limited, depending on the debtor's solvency and willingness to fulfill obligations. Servitudes are limited real rights that allow someone to use another person's property for a specific purpose. They are important in property law as they enable shared access and use without full ownership. Servitudes grant limited rights over someone else's property. For example, a right of way allows passage across land, or a right to access water from a neighboring property. There are two main types of servitudes. Predial servitudes benefit a property and attach to the land. For instance, a shared driveway allows access to multiple homes. Personal servitudes benefit a specific individual and end when that person is no longer involved. Servitudes can be created in several ways. They may be established by agreement between the property owners through long-term use known as prescription, or by operation of law in certain situations. When exercising a servitude, the dominant owner must use it reasonably and only for its intended purpose. They cannot cause harm to the servient property, and the rights remain enforceable. Servitudes can terminate when their purpose is fulfilled by mutual agreement, through prolonged non-use, or if the dominant property is destroyed. Real security rights provide creditors with security over property to ensure debt repayment. These rights allow creditors to enforce payment against specific assets if debts are not repaid. A pledge involves delivering movable property to the creditor as security for the debt. The creditor holds the property until the debt is repaid. A mortgage secures immovable property, like land or buildings, as collateral for a debt. It is created by agreement and registration, allowing the creditor to foreclose if the debt is not repaid. A lien is a legal claim over property arising from work done or materials supplied to improve it. It arises automatically and gives the creditor the right to retain payment until satisfied. Co-ownership arises when two or more people own the same property jointly. This section explores the different forms of co-ownership, the rights and responsibilities of each co-owner, and the legal mechanisms for resolving disputes among co-owners. Co-ownership occurs when two or more people own the same property together, sharing rights and responsibilities. The two main forms of co-ownership are joint tenancy and tenancy in common. In joint tenancy, co-owners have equal shares and the right of survivorship, meaning if one owner dies, their share passes to the surviving owners. In tenancy in common, shares can be unequal, and there's no automatic survivorship. Co-owners have several rights, including the right to use and enjoy the property, to share in its value and any profits, and to participate in major decisions affecting the property. Co-owners also have responsibilities, such as contributing to maintenance and repair costs, paying property taxes and other expenses, and sharing liabilities for any property-related debts. When disputes arise among co-owners, several legal mechanisms can resolve them. These include partition, which involves dividing or selling the property, reaching an agreement through negotiation, or seeking court intervention for judicial resolution. Possession and holdership are distinct concepts in property law. Possession refers to physical control over property with the intention of owning it, while holdership refers to physical control based on a specific legal right, such as a lease. This section clarifies the differences and explains the legal consequences of each. This is a common source of errors, so we will go through it slowly and carefully. Possession involves physical control over the property combined with the intention to own it. Holdership also involves physical control, but this control is based on a specific legal right, such as a lease agreement. The key difference is that possession requires the intention to own the property, while holdership requires a specific legal right that grants control. In terms of legal consequences, possession typically grants full ownership rights and responsibilities, whereas holdership provides limited rights based on the underlying legal agreement. Many constitutions around the world include a property clause to protect ownership rights while allowing for necessary reforms. In South Africa, this is found in Section 25 of the Constitution. Section 25 of the South African Constitution provides comprehensive protection for property rights. It ensures that no one can be arbitrarily deprived of their property without due process. However, Section 25 also includes important provisions for land reform. It allows for expropriation of land for public purposes, particularly to address the historical injustices of apartheid-era land dispossession and to ensure equitable access to land and resources. When expropriation occurs, Section 25 requires that compensation be just and equitable. This considers not only the market value of the property, but also factors like the history of acquisition, the purpose of expropriation, and the impact on the owner. Compensation must also be paid without unreasonable delay. Section 25 thus strikes a careful balance between protecting property rights and enabling necessary land reform to achieve social justice and equitable resource distribution in South Africa. Land reform initiatives are designed to correct historical imbalances in land ownership that have persisted for generations. These programs seek to promote equitable distribution and economic opportunity by addressing systemic inequalities. Historical inequalities often stem from colonial land policies that favored certain groups while dispossessing indigenous populations and marginalized communities. This created lasting economic disparities that continue to affect social mobility and wealth distribution. The primary goals of land reform include reducing poverty by redistributing productive land, promoting economic development through increased agricultural productivity, ensuring food security for communities, and advancing social justice by correcting historical wrongs. Land reform employs various methods, including redistributing land from large estates to small farmers, establishing cooperative farming systems, facilitating market-based land purchases with government support, and improving tenure security through legal reforms. Land reform faces significant challenges, including political opposition from established landowners, inadequate infrastructure to support new farmers, limited funding for implementation, and shortages of technical expertise in agricultural development. Land reform impacts property rights by expanding access for disadvantaged groups while potentially affecting established owners' rights through redistribution. Economically, successful reforms can increase agricultural productivity and reduce poverty, though poor implementation may disrupt markets and investment. Land reform initiatives have achieved successes such as increased agricultural productivity, reduced rural poverty, and improved social equity in many cases. However, some programs have failed due to political instability, reduced private investment, and unintended market distortions. Land use is regulated by various statutes and planning regulations. These legal frameworks ensure orderly development and protect community interests. The purpose of these regulations is to ensure orderly development, protect the environment, and promote sustainable land use that benefits communities. The scope of these regulations covers urban planning, rural areas, environmental protection, and infrastructure development across different regions. Zoning laws divide land into specific zones designated for residential, commercial, industrial, or recreational use. Environmental protection measures regulate activities to prevent pollution, protect wildlife habitats, and ensure sustainable use of natural resources. Building codes establish standards for construction safety, structural integrity, and compliance with health and safety regulations. These regulations significantly affect property development by influencing planning permissions, construction costs, and the types of developments that are permitted on specific land parcels. In summary, statutory regulations for land use and planning balance the need for development with the protection of environmental and community interests. Sectional titles provide a legal framework for ownership of individual units within multi-unit buildings, such as condominiums. A sectional title scheme divides a building into separate units, each owned individually, while common areas are shared. Establishing a sectional title scheme requires several steps. First, the developer gets approval for building plans. Then, a land surveyor creates detailed sectional plans showing each unit. The scheme is registered at the deeds office, and finally, individual title deeds are issued for each unit. Unit owners have both rights and responsibilities. Rights include exclusive use of their unit, an undivided share in the common property, and voting rights in body corporate decisions. Responsibilities include paying levies, following rules, and maintaining their unit. The body corporate is the management entity responsible for common property. It handles maintenance of shared facilities like elevators, pools, and gardens, collects levies, and ensures all owners follow the rules. Consider Ocean View Condominium, a 50-unit building with shared pool and gym. Each owner pays a monthly levy of R2000. The body corporate handles repairs to the common elevator. When an owner sells their unit, the sectional title transfers ownership seamlessly. Mineral and water rights govern the extraction and use of natural resources in South Africa. These rights are crucial for economic development while ensuring environmental sustainability. Mineral rights in South Africa are owned by the state as per Section 25 of the Constitution. The Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act regulates prospecting, mining, and mineral beneficiation, ensuring that these activities benefit the country and its people. Water is considered a public resource in South Africa. The National Water Act governs water management, requiring licenses for water use and abstraction. The law prioritizes basic human needs, environmental health, and equitable allocation. Government regulation plays a key role in managing these resources. The Department of Mineral Resources oversees mining activities, while the Department of Water and Sanitation manages water resources. Environmental impact assessments are mandatory for significant projects to evaluate potential impacts. Balancing economic development with environmental protection is challenging. While mining and water use provide economic benefits, they can cause pollution, resource depletion, and contribute to climate change. Sustainable practices are essential for long-term viability. Recent policies include Mining Charter 3 from 2018, which promotes transformation and sustainable mining practices. Water allocation reforms focus on equitable distribution, while integrated resource management strategies provide a holistic approach to balancing development and conservation. In conclusion, property law encompasses a wide range of complex and dynamic legal principles. Throughout this guide, we've explored fundamental concepts including ownership definitions, acquisition methods, and protection mechanisms. Key areas covered include real and personal rights, servitudes, security interests like pledges and mortgages, co-ownership arrangements, and the distinction between possession and holdership. We also examined constitutional protections under Section 25, land reform initiatives to address inequality, statutory regulations for land use, sectional titles in multi-unit buildings, and mineral and water rights management. For further learning, consider exploring legal textbooks, government resources on land policies, and professional legal associations that can provide additional guidance. Property law is essential for protecting assets and ensuring fair dealings. Remember to consult qualified legal professionals when navigating property-related matters to ensure compliance and protection of your rights.